Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today, we're going to be continuing the conversation on identity evolution. And this will be a short one, but this is really about how you know when you have fully embodied your new identity versus when you're still in the middle of it. And this is true whether it's for you personally as the founder of your business or whether it is for the business as a whole, because we frequently experience an identity evolution and either we do that first and our business has to catch up, or sometimes the business forces an identity evolution because of market changes and external things, and then we have to catch up to it as well. And so this whole topic of identity evolution that I've been talking about quite a bit, sometimes I think there's just these beautiful synchronicities and beautiful examples that show up in our life that seem so unrelated. And then when we look at them, it just reinforces the same messages over and over again. And I was texting and talking to my ex-husband, and he, for those who don't know, if you're unfamiliar, we recently got divorced. What most people don't realize is that there was an awful lot of identity evolution on both of our parts behind that decision. And we eventually reached this point when we realized that the absolute most loving thing we could possibly do for one another was to actually decide to get divorced and walk our own paths, because one of us would have to very deeply sacrifice who we were and what we wanted in order for the other person to be happy. We'd kind of reached that point in our relationship where that was going to be true. And we approached it a little bit differently. Like for me, my identity evolution was much more getting back to who I had always been, that I had ignored a lot because that didn't necessarily align with the person that I thought he needed me to be. And I can say that now after being outside the relationship for a while and really objectively and honestly looking back on it, I didn't recognize it then when I was in it, of course, because we often don't recognize things when we're in the middle of them. But that space and that distance gives us a beautiful ability to see things that we can't always see when we're right in the middle of it. And so for me, it was more like getting back to who I'd always been. And I think the big evolution was no longer putting that aside, no longer sacrificing or compromising parts of myself because I thought that it would make, in that specific instance, my partner happy. But I noticed I had been doing that in my own business with my team. I wanted to keep my team happy. So I kept offers that I didn't feel connected with anymore because I wanted them to be able to continue delivering them. And I wanted them to be able to do the work that they loved. I noticed that I was doing some of that with my clients. I wanted them to continue to be happy with some of the things I had always done. So I kept things that didn't really feel as an alignment for me. And again, it was that like distance and that very objective look that made me recognize I was doing that, because it's so hard to see when you're in the middle of it. And that has been a big part of the catalyst of a lot of the changes that I'm making in the business that I've been sharing a little bit with you about, and I'm really excited to share more about in some of the coming weeks. But that being said, so that was my evolution. My evolution was more like getting back to who I was. His evolution was more, and I'm putting this is my interpretation of his evolution. Of course, his evolution is his own, and it would have to be his own words that he's sharing for it to be fully true. But what I see, what I interpreted his as being, is more a discovery of who he is. And some of it was accepting parts of himself that he did not accept previously, or that he had hidden, not from others necessarily, but more from himself. But I think it was more just this discovery and exploration of who he really is. And what's really interesting is, as part of that, I still refer to him as he because he was he when we were married. But he does not go by he anymore. He goes by they, them, their. I'm still trying to get used to that in historical tense. We had talked about the fact that it's okay if I still refer to him as he. And him and all of that, because that's who he had been to me when we were married. Now things are different for them. And so in current state, I'm trying to embody a lot of those changes and get used to a lot of those changes. But as I knew him, he was a him. And the name that he had when we were married and for a lot of his life, as soon as we finalized our divorce, one of the very first things he did was actually go and file for a name change. And so the person I married quite literally does not exist anymore, in the sense that he has had such a beautiful identity evolution and fully recognizing and realizing and accepting who he is. Again, this is my perspective of his change. He can kind of share his own perspective in more detail. But that being said, I think it's, in unfolding for him, and I think it will continue to be something that he discovers more of. But it was a very big deal, to the point that he went and actually changed his name legally. He went and changed his pronouns, right? He has made a lot of different shifts in who he's recognized that he really is or who he no longer is. And it really struck me quite interesting, because at the time we were married, he was he, and he had a different name, and it's the only name I've ever known him by. And that has changed, and we haven't actually spoken. We text, but we haven't actually spoken since he's made that formal change. And I was at the vet with our little dog, and I recorded a little video of him, and I was saying, "Hey, Rem, say hi." And I said his new name, or I said their new name. And that meant so much to him that I had done that, which was really nice. And that was great. But that wasn't the part that jumped out at me. What was really fascinating was what he said back. He said, "Thank you for using my name. That meant a lot to me." And what he did not say was, "Thank you for using my new name." To me, it's a new name. I knew him as somebody different. I knew him as this person who he was to me, and the role that he played in my life, and the role he played in our marriage, and all of this. How I knew that person was one particular way. So to me, this is new, but to them, it's not. To them, this is who they are. And so it struck me when they said it that they didn't say, it struck me when they said it that they didn't say, "Thank you for using my new name." And they said, "Thank you for using my name." And I think that to me was just such an example of someone who's truly stepped into who they are and their identity. That identity has evolved. It's not so much an active identity evolution, although, of course, we're always in an active identity evolution. But that's an identity that has evolved. Their name is different. That is who they are. I used their name. I did not use their new name. I used their name. And if you think about that through the lens of everything, where are you still qualifying? Where are you saying the version of my new business, my new offer? Oh, now I do this. Now I do this. I work with this person. I am this. Where is it just where you've so stepped into the new identity that it just is? You don't feel the need to qualify. You don't feel the need to say, "New, I do this now. I used to do this and now I do this," right? Because once that identity has evolved, you don't need to explain the old identity anymore. You don't need to anchor to the old identity anymore, because it's truly evolved. And so for many of you, especially if you are in a place where you're going through some pretty radical reinvention, I know I am in my business, sort of. It might not feel like it as much on the surface of what I'm doing, but there's a lot under the surface that I'm doing that I'll share more about that is a pretty radical reinvention. And I know many other people are too. Some of my clients are selling businesses, are shutting down businesses and starting something new, are doing something completely and totally different. They were a practitioner of something and now they are going to be a coach to people, or they had a method and they taught people this method, or they had a service and they implemented the service and now they're going off and doing something so completely different. And it's semi-related in the fact that they're using their same skills, but it looks very, very different on the surface. New business name, new business logo, new business website, new business services, sometimes new clients, sometimes new social media accounts, sometimes new emails, sometimes new all of the things. The only thing that's the same in some cases that they are still the person who founded and are leading it. And so when that's true, you can start to tell that you fully made it on the other side when you stop with the qualifiers and it just is. I am the person who does this. Not, well, I'm in the middle of a change and I used to do this and now I'm getting ready to, or well, I've recently started working with, but for many years I used to do this. And so think and pay attention to your words, to how you talk about things, how you feel about things. And that is an interesting indicator as to whether or not your identity has evolved or whether you are in the middle of an identity evolution. And if you are maybe at the cusp of an identity evolution, instead, you might be talking more about the future. You might be looking forward and saying, I want to, or I'm going to. And so throughout our business, we have many identity evolutions, many, many of them, right? From making our first 6 figures to making our first 7 figures, to being a solopreneur, to leading a team, to being in the day-to-day, to not being in the day-to-day and truly being that visionary leader, from being the person who delivers a service to being the person who leads a team who delivers a service. I mean, there's so many different identity evolutions. Some really big ones are starting your own business, or leaving a corporate career, or closing one business and starting a new business, or even closing the offer that you were always known for and launching something different within the same business, right? There's all of these different identity evolutions. And whether you feel like you're on the cusp of something, there's something that like will not shut up. Like you just keep thinking about it constantly. And you're like, all right, I got it. This is not going to leave me alone. Clearly, there's something I want to do here. Let me give this some space and let me really focus in on it and let me see what this could be. Or maybe it's something you've always wanted to do that you didn't give yourself permission to do. Maybe you didn't do something because of the situations that I shared, where it's a partner or a team member or clients or community or something along those lines, where you didn't want to disappoint others. So you hung on to something longer than you should have, or kept yourself from doing something that you really wanted. Whatever that looks like, look at where you're at. Is it in the future and you're talking about something you want to do? So you're at the cusp of an identity evolution. If you're in the middle of it and you find yourself qualifying, one of the ways to work through it, I mean, it's going to take as long as it takes because it just does. But if you start all of a sudden speaking as if and thinking as if and making decisions as if you have fully embodied it, as if the identity has evolved and you're not in the middle of an identity evolution, all of a sudden you will often find that you get there quicker, that you get there with it being less of a bumpy ride, because you just start to accept that it's inevitable, that it is, that it's happening, that it's happened, instead of it feeling like this thing that you want, this thing in the future that you want. Even if you're making steps towards it, it still feels like it's in the future. You want to bring your future into your present and you want to make it feel real now. So anyway, this is just a little bit of a different spin on identity evolution that I wanted to share. I've been reflecting on this and observing this and having a lot of conversations with clients on it. And then the conversation that I had with my ex through text was really quite fascinating. And I thought just such a beautiful illustration of this. And it put into kind of words for me, it formed for me this message that I was sharing in this episode that I don't think I fully had words for until we had that conversation. And all of a sudden I realized, they didn't say new, They just said my name, and it showed to me that they fully embodied and made that evolution in where in my business, where in your business, where in your clients' businesses, where are you seeing that same thing? And where can you step fully into the new identity instead of feeling like you're still in the middle of it? So hope you got a lot of value out of this episode. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your own stories and examples. Head over to Substack. Link is down below in the bio, and go ahead and share there. I do read and respond to every single comment, and I will see you again next week. If you are a visionary founder ready to get yourself out of the day-to-day operations of your business and scale in a much more simple, sustainable way, I have just the thing. Register to join me for my Scale Simpler workshop at scalesimpler.com. In it, I break down the hidden barriers that keep you trapped in the day-to-day of your business and what to do to finally extract yourself once and for all so things do not keep coming back onto your plate. And if you're someone who partners with founders as their right-hand advisor, consultant, or fractional, I invite you to explore our scaling certification and licensing programs at strategicopsinstitute.com.